This is your video for Accentuate the Negative, Investigation 1.4 Part C, where we are continuing to work with addition and subtraction of integers. This one video is going to go through how to use the number line model to figure out what your answer is going to be. So our learning target here, what you want to try and have a fairly good understanding of by the end of this video, is how to use the number line to model addition and subtraction of integers. So we are going to get started with addition. The main thing is with addition on the number line that if you are adding a positive number, you want to move to the right on the number line. And if you are adding a negative number, you want to move towards the negative numbers, which would be moving towards the left. So I'm going to go through a few with you and then leave some at the end for you to try on your own and then check your progress. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one is 4 plus 2. So to show this, we start at the number that is given to us first in the problem. This is 4. And then because we are adding a positive 2, then we are going to move to the right. So I'm at 4, I make 2 jumps to the right, I end at 6, so 4 plus 2 is 6. Let's look at our next one. Negative 1 plus 5. So I start at negative 1. I have a positive 5 that I am adding, which means I am going to make 5 jumps to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That ends me at 4. So negative 1 plus 5 is 4. Let's look at our next one. A negative 6 plus a negative 3. I start at negative 6, and now this time, because I'm adding a negative number, I'm going to move to the left. So I'm going to move to the 3 left. 1, 2, 3. That ends me at negative 9. So negative 3 and negative 6 added together give me a negative 9. Let's do one more before you try on your own. Negative 8 plus 2. Start at negative 8, and I'm going to, since I'm adding a positive, I'm going to move to the right 2 times. 1, 2. That leaves me at negative 6. All right, I'm going to have you try the next 4 on your own. So you're going to have to pause the video, try it, and then when you hit play, you will see the responses to each one of them. Just a heads up that on the third one down, where it's negative 12 plus 5, the number line's not quite long enough, so you will need to add in 2 additional dashes to get yourself to negative 12. So go ahead and pause, try on your own, and then push play and see how you did. All right, here are your responses for the remaining 4. 10 plus negative 7 is 3. Negative 2 plus negative 6 is a negative 8. Negative 12 plus 5 is negative 7. And negative 4 plus negative 2 is negative 6. Let's take a look at some subtraction now. We are going to think about subtraction in a slightly different way to model this on the number line. Generally, we think of subtraction as the difference between those two numbers. To help model on the number line, we also want to think of it as not only the difference, but the distance. So we're going to be counting spaces between these two numbers. Let's take a look at our first problem. So we want to be thinking about the distance between two numbers. So we have negative 4 and then a positive 2. And if we count the spaces, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we know that our answer has to have the number 6. Now we need to determine if it would be a positive 6 or a negative 6. And sometimes logic helps us figure this out a little bit. If we originally started at negative 4 and we thought about losing even more, and typically when we lose, we move to the number line to the left, that means we would have a negative 6. Oftentimes, it also works to think about which number would have the larger absolute value and take the sign of that number. It's not 100% accurate, but most of the time it gives you a good idea of if your final answer should be positive or negative. All right, so 5 minus 1. This is one most of us are going to know the answer to, but just to represent the distance, we have a 5 and we have a 1, both numbers being positive, and if you count the distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, you would have 4, and again, if we think about this somewhat as logically, because we are completely on the positive side of the number line, my final answer is going to be positive. The idea of distance specifically helps us in our next problem, because these can sometimes be the trickiest to understand. So I have a negative 6, and I am subtracting a negative 3. So I want to think about the distance between negative 6 and negative 3. And I have 1, 2, 3. So my answer is going to have the integer 3, and now I need to determine is that a positive or a negative. Well, again, if I look at the fact that I am completely on the negative side of the number line, my answer is a negative 3. So let's look at our next one. Negative 8 minus 2. So I'm looking at, oops, not there. I'm looking at the distance between negative 8 and a positive 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So my answer is going to have the number 10. Now I need to determine positive or negative. Well, the majority of my numbers are in the negative sign. The larger number with the absolute value is 8, which is negative. And if I were to think about starting at negative 8 and then subtracting or losing even more, and when we lose we go to the left, logically it just makes sense that I would have the negative 10. So let's look at the next one. Negative 10 minus a negative 7. So I'm going to start at negative 10, and I need to figure out the distance between negative 10 and negative 7. 1, 2, 3. So that gives me the number I'm looking for. And again, I'm completely on the negative side of this number line. Negative 3. All right, I'm going to leave the next 3 for you to try. When you come back and play the video, you'll be able to see the responses. All right, so the first one might have been a bit tricky that I left you on your own for. -2 minus 6. When you use the number line, you get that the distance between a -2 and 6 is 8. And again, this one required a little just bit of logic, because if you were subtracting, that is meaning that you are losing even more. So you have a -8. You'd actually be going further to the left on the number line. -12 minus a -5, you have a distance of 7, and you are completely in the negative side of the number line, so you have a -7. And the last one, -7 minus a -6, you have a distance of 13. Again, you're subtracting, so you're thinking about losing even more. Also, this is another case where 7 has the larger negative value and has the negative sign, so that carries over. The one that it doesn't work on is the one that I left you on your own for the first time, because technically there 6 has the larger absolute value, but the answer is still negative. So that's where I said at the beginning that it won't work 100% of the time. But at least you can visualize the distance between two numbers and get the integer that you are looking for. And if you're not quite there, try and logically think through whether it should be a positive or a negative answer. So hopefully this helps, gives you another representation of how adding and subtracting of integers work. We will look at further examples in class and try and come up with ways to think about these where you may not always have to model, but you can come up with what we call an algorithm to solve these. If you have further questions, make sure you come to them with class.